Hello, Mordarim here. In today's video I want to show you an incredible super fun lightning storm build for Diablo 4. The ultimate Thunder God human lightning storm build aims at providing you with a shocking experience capable of clearing all Nightmare Dungeon difficulties, the pit, and all bosses the game has to offer. Now the biggest strength of this build is its ridiculous AoE instantly clearing everything you come across. Be it around corners or walls, we don't rely on projectiles, so we hit them. The boss DPS is also absolutely insane and capable of melting anything that stands before you. And there is no problem with spirit during leveling or the endgame, given we now get the new spirit per second affix, which makes it possible to become the perfect storm. Now remember to check out the written guide on Mobalytics. It provides you with a detailed section for each topic explaining how to bolster your defenses, scale your damage and how to transition to different phases. You also have multiple tabs for the leveling bracket, which come with additional notes and aspects as well as stat recommendations. Season 4 changed quite a bit, which made the early game as well as the end game of this build much more enjoyable. The game saw the much needed addition of spirit per second as an affix on your helmet, chest and boot armor, which in turn makes for a much smoother experience without the need to constantly struggle for resources with a basic attack. The end game also saw the addition of a new unique item, which massively boosts the damage of this build, as well as tempering, which now provides us with a ton of distant or close damage modifiers, which in turn boost our multiplier of Thunderstruck, a Paragon node letting us double it. With Masterworking, we can further boost the spirit per second generation as well as reduce the spirit cost of our spells, which provides us with infinite spirit even without Tibbard's Will. However, we still use this one for additional spirit recovery, which we combine with Earthen Bulwark's unstoppable status to activate it, and the symbiotic aspect which reliably resets the cooldown with Nature Fury procs. Now this interaction we did a little bit later, but it helps us transition from the leveling to the endgame phase. We still keep Tibbard's Will for the damage boost, but we don't need it for the spirit. As for scaling, it is done through companions and the shepherd aspect, resulting in a 180% multiplier. This combined with uniques is the absolutely best way to scale our damage, especially with the new unique Unsung Ascetics Wraps, which provide us with an additional strike each time a lightning strike grows, as well as doubling our strikes on a critical strike. This also comes with an additional more multiplier. Crits are our bread and butter, meaning we are going to stack as much as possible, reaching upwards of 60%. 100 is possible, but we are going to sacrifice too much damage with distant for this to be worth it. And gaining large amounts is possible through tempers, allowing us to grab storm critical strike chance as well as distant damage on most gear pieces. Now this leads to some insane multipliers, allowing us to become the perfect storm that is approaching. Now if you like what I do and want to support me, make sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you have not already. I cover all sorts of RPGs, speed strategy, C or ARPG on this channel in the form of extensive guides. So thank you very much for supporting me and let's dive into the meat. First let's go over the basic gameplay loop and lightning storm channel mechanics. You can find everything written down in a convenient guide on Mobalytics, linked down below. The gameplay strategy with this one is we channel Lightning Storm to the desired stage, which is 3 lightning strikes. So we count the lightning strikes and count 1, 2, 3. That's it. You don't want to stack this one above that, except for world bosses. World bosses get hit by multiple lightning strikes because the zone grows and we get more lightning strikes per zone, but because the zone grows, we are less likely to hit 2 lightning strikes in the same position, which results in less DPS for smaller targets. Now with the new unique, we can charge 1 additional stage because we have 1 additional lightning strike, so we are getting to hit the same target multiple times and it's just better DPS like that. Now next we are using Earthen Bulwark to gain access to Barrier, Unstoppable and proc the Vigilance passive, which is a DR buff, and we are going to proc Tibbard's Will. Then we are going to start spamming Lightning Storm. This means the following. If you're channeling your Lightning Storm, you're pressing the button and holding it. But this is less DPS than just pressing the button over and over again. To give you some example, Lightning Storm does not scale with attack speed, except with the base attack speed of the weapon. So if you have a 0.9, 1 and 1.1 the weapon, you're going to see an increase in the channeling speed. So 30 strikes, 31 strikes and 36 strikes or something like that. This is not relevant for our build. Tapping is restricted only by how fast your finger goes. So if we assume you hit the button 3 times per second on average, you're going to generate around 55 to 56 lightning strikes. So I tested this one with 20 seconds and found out you strike around 55 times. This makes it superior, and this one is not dependent on the attack speed of the weapon. This means the tapping does not scale with attack speed whatsoever. Next, we're going to petrify targets, Poison Creeper, Raven and Wolf for clarity and for applying poison, all of which will buff our damage and crit strike chance. Down below, you will have a detailed description of the Lightning Storm mechanic, also for attack speed down below and what I found out. Now, with this summed up, we now know how Lightning Storm works. So we can also calculate how much mana we need to generate in order to sustain our addiction. Given in this build, our Storm Strike is going to cost 16 mana or 16 spirit. We will need to generate 44 spirit per second to sustain this one for 20 seconds or indefinitely. This is very hard to do. So we need some spirit cost reduction. And would you look at that, the game now provides you with spirit cost reduction on the weapon, which goes to upwards of 50% with a greater affix. That's insane. That's a lot of spirit cost reduction. With this, we can lower this one to 8, so we only need 22 spirit per second. And with the best tempered affixes on the chest and on the boots, we get 12 and 11 spirit per second. This means 23. So we can reliably sustain this one indefinitely. That's the basic mechanic in the end game once you start to temper and masterworker stuff. This is the infinite spirit perfect god build. This is basically the same as the Uber endgame one, but the Uber endgame one also has the Harlequin Crest and the Starless Skies one. This lowers it even further because Starless Skies is another 40% reduced spirit cost reduction. This in mind, we can now switch from the transition build, which is currently using the Nature's Fury keystone, to the Perfect Storm keystone, because we don't need to reliably reset our Earthen Bulwark to generate mana or spirit with Tibalt's Will. That's the basic idea of the build. First, let's go over the leveling skill tree, because there is a small difference. It looks a little bit different than the endgame one. So once we transition to the next build, we want to have our Earthen Bulwark and Unstoppable, otherwise we're going to get stomped by stuns. During leveling, that's not that important and we require a little bit more damage to sustain our addiction, and we're going to use Perfect Storm during leveling because it's very hard to find the symbiotic aspect and reset this one reliably with Nature's Fury, and it's not enough because, well, we don't have Tibalt's Will. So this build is much better with the Perfect Storm during leveling. Once we transition with Tibalt's Will, before we can masterwork our stuff, we're going to use this skill tree, the Nature's Fury one. And once we sustain our addiction, we're going to exchange this one for Perfect Storm, but we are going to keep Earthen Bulwark. The next thing for the leveling is you can look at the leveling path and have a detailed description when to pick what. I will not go over this one because it's very simple. You just pick the 44th skill point and pick Cycle of Life and move on. That's basically the whole leveling. You can find this one, by the way, in the Mobalytics app. You can also download this one and have an overlay, so you can just press tab and Q with this one loaded and can see, okay, I need for the 10th wild impulses. Then you just tap Q again and it's gone. So during leveling, you're going to use Earth Spike in the skill bar. This is instead of Earthen Bulwark because we don't require and don't have Earthen Bulwark during leveling. So next up are the Spirit Boons. What are we going to do for the Spirit Boons? For the Spirit Boons, we're going to unlock them in this order. 50 Spirit Boon offerings for Iron Feathers. That's 14% more life. Then Overload, because that's another source of damage during leveling. We want that because we want to level faster. Then we have Calamity, which increases the duration of our Petrify, so this ultimate skill, by 25% to around 10 seconds. That's pretty good. Lastly, we're going to pick Wariness because that's 15% DR. DR is not found on equipment anymore, except for unique items, so it's much more valuable to have this one. You will feel much tankier, and then you finish up the tree and get Aven Wrath for a massive 30% more multiplier on crits in the Eagle tree. Afterwards, you really want to set up your stuff on your gear. So during leveling, you're going to exchange your weapon constantly, so you can reapply Shepherd's Aspect to get the benefit of 20%, but you can also use this one on your amulet. Retaliation you can skip, and the rest keep it like that. So you don't necessarily need to have this one on your weapon during leveling, and you can omit retaliation because you're not going to have constant uptime on Fortify. Later on you will fix this one with a few things, but for now you don't need to necessarily have this one and can just exchange your weapon constantly. For the most important aspect, I think the Lightning Dancer aspect will provide you with the most benefits early on because you want to clear as many mobs as possible. This increases your AoE. You have your aspect of Stampede to benefit from additional pets. Those will count towards Shepherd's Aspect, and you can pick up the Undying Aspect for a little bit more sustain. As for the stats, Spirit per second is the most important one on your helmet, Spirit per second is the most important one on your chest, and the same is true for the boots, but it's the second stat you want. So if you find boots with movement speed and Spirit per second early on, because you will find items only with 2 affixes, those are the most important one. They have a priority list, so it's Spirit per second and maximum life for those. Next, you want to have gloves with lightning storm ranks and crit strike chance, pants with maximum life and armor, a weapon with resource cost reduction and damage, an amulet with movement speed and crit strike chance, and 2 rings with crit strike chance and maximum life. So those are the most important stats you will get during leveling. For your gems, after you reach the sacred tier, you want to slot in diamond or any other gem that's providing you with resistances that you currently need. You want to cap your resistances at the latest in the sacred tier. You have to cap them in the ancestral tier. For this, you have an explanation on resistances and how they work in the defense tree. Armor is capped at 9230 with an 85% total physical reduction. This one is necessary to get once you are fighting enemies with level 100 or more. So 100 to 200 mobs are going to be taken care of with this armor value. So once those are done, you're ready to transition into the end game, which is this section. You now can farm Duriel for Tybalt's Will. You now can farm the Ice Beast for the Unsung Reps. And the God's Leg Crown can also be found at Duriel. So those 2 bosses you need to farm for those uniques, and those will occupy your helmet, your gloves, and your pant slot. So only your chest armor and your boots will be providing you with Spirit per second at this point. So if you're struggling with that, don't use the God's Leg Crown until you can fix it. This is fixed by resource cost reduction on your weapon and on one of your rings. Doesn't matter which one, but either drop the willpower or the resistances to all elements, because those are very important. And later on, you will be able to temper items 2 times. On rings, you can temper resource generation, which will boost your spirit per second, which will fix it, kind of. So you can fix your spirit issues very early on, even before you get to master working. The most important thing here to take away is you want to temper offensive damage resistant first. This is true for both rings and your weapon, and for your amulet you want Storm Critical Strike chance. You want to boost your Storm Critical Strike chance or Critical Strike chance to 60% plus as fast as possible. It is really crucial that you do. Your damage is really reliant on critical strikes. The wraps only work when you crit. You have a 30% more multiplier on Aven Wrath. So those 2 are going to boost your damage by more than double. Another thing you can exchange once you have your spirit in order and you don't necessarily need your Nature's Fury keystone, you can swap to Perfect Storm and exchange the symbiotic aspect for the aspect of concussive strikes. So this one is a lucky hit that can daze enemies, and once an enemy is dazed, you deal increased damage to them. So it's a more damage multiplier on your boots. So that's the transition. You have more information down below in the leveling section. So this part specifically talks about the transitioning from Earthen Spike to Earthen Bulwark and Tybalt's Will. And now, once you have your spirit in order, you can transition to Perfect Storm, which is displayed here. So here is the calculation: 12 spirit plus 11 spirit because of 2 affixes. Tapping 55 to 56 times is 440 spirit in 20 seconds, which is an equivalent of 22 spirit per second used. If we can sustain this value, we are golden. Now, lastly, we want to take a look at scaling our damage, because scaling our damage is not that trivial. They changed the scaling, how crit and vulnerable damage work. So vulnerable damage is a 20% more multiplier and crits are 50% more damage multiplier if you don't have additional stuff like Aven Wrath. Every instance of vulnerable damage and crit damage is an increase, not a more multiplier anymore. So you can see this right here. So that's very important. But the Druid has a Paragon node that's called Thunderstruck. This Thunderstruck node takes 20% of your additive damage to distant and damage to close and translates it to a more multiplier. So we double dip with those stats. In the new season, you can temper offensive damage to distant on your rings, on your weapon, on your gloves, and on your amulet. You will get the most benefit from 2 tempers on your rings and 1 on your two-handed weapon. This will result in 800 damage increase to distant if you temper this one to 12, which is not that trivial. This is an endgame system, but this translates to the most amount of more damage, more multiplier that you can get. Next, let's go over the Paragon tree. We're going to start with the Fulminate node in our starter cluster. Then we're going to path to the Thunderstruck node because we want to get this one as fast as possible. We are going to then path right here to the Exploit glyph and unlock this one with 25 dexterity. Then we are going to unlock the Ancestral Guidance node down below here, path all the way to the next board and unlock the Territorial glyph. This will provide you with increases to close damage, which is a multiplier for us. And if something gets close to us, we have a damage reduction for free here. Next, we're not going to unlock the Human glyph yet. We are going to unlock the Heightened Malice board. Grab the Spirit glyph here and unlock it. So we need the Threshold bonus. This will provide us with increased crit strike damage. Then we path to this side and unlock the Inner Beast board for the Undaunted glyph. This will provide us with 10% damage reduction the more Fortify we have. And then we are going to also unlock the Human glyph on the left side for another 10% damage reduction. All of which will result in a ton of damage and damage reduction. That's we want from the Paragon board. So one more thing, if you want more guides, you can go on the profile right here and you have a list of different guides for sorcerers and for druids for now that are all 1 to 100 detailed leveling guides. You can also find more builds on my channel. I will provide them before the season starts. Now this sums up the video. If you liked what you saw, make sure to like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also support me some more by joining the channel membership, which will allow me to keep making videos. So thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye.